going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. Those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
Chris, what we're going to do here is just take a look at the top 10 hottest comics of the week. And I know you're going to have some additional comments on this segment, but we'll get to it right now, right?
Yep.
Now, here we go. At number 10, we have Avengers. Number 9, look at that, Wonder Man on the cover. At number 9, we have Hulk 449, Jordan Norrie. I wonder how many you have of those. At number 8, The Boys. Number 7, first appearance of the legend who actually, well, I'm not going to say anything. At number 7, we have Grimm number 1, the third print. At number 6, we have Spawn 38, the first appearance of Cygor. At number 5, we have Spectacular Spider-Man 97, the first appearance of Jonathan On, later becomes the Spot. Number 4, we have Wonder Man number 1, first solo title and one shot. Number 3, we have Spectacular Spider-Man 99, first cover appearance of the Spots, and the first cover appearance of the Spot, and his second appearance. Jeez. It's been a long weekend, guys. At number 2, Spectacular Spider-Man 98, first appearance, full appearance of the Spot, and at number 1, Wonder Man. I never would have thought to see this, Chris. At number 1, we have Wonder Man number 1 from 1991, his first solo ongoing title. I love this cover, by the way. Again, very sentimental about this character. Chris,
man,
take it away, please.
Well, so I'm going to be real with you guys. I got a Whatnot show coming up on Tuesday, right? 28. I'm going to have some Wonder Man books up for sale that are on this list, including the number 1 book. I'm probably going to have all of those Spectacular Spider-Mans for sale on my Spider-Man Whatnot show that I'm having in July. And while this may seem like a shameless plug of my sales on Whatnot, I'm saying this because, guys, I'm not going to let that get into my honesty and my transparency and how I'm going to deliver these thoughts that I have for you today on these books on this list. Will I give books props? Will I give them flops? Will I be extremely negative? Will I be optimistic? Who knows? We'll know in a few minutes. So let's just get into it, right? So
before we do, actually, yes. I'm going to keep reminding all you people, this is what makes this segment so fun. We want to hear if it's props or flops for you.
Yeah,
of course, we'll bring it up, what you think as well. So let's just have it. Chris, just get into it. Let's just do it.
All right. So here's the thing. If you guys didn't notice, this list consisted of 2 main things. Wonder Man and The Spot. Bring it back up, Jeff. How many books do we have Wonder Man and The Spot? 6 out of 10 books. We have all this Wonder Man stuff because of an announcement. I mean, it's still in the rumor mill, but it's pretty official without hearing it. We add credible sources. We have names pulled in to executive producers and directors and writers, etc. So it's pretty credible. Wonder Man's coming to the MCU. Okay, that's why these books are on here. The Spot. We know that The Spot is hot right now because of the not Into the Spider-Verse, but
Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse, part 1. We got some images, so we know that's why The Spot's here. So I'm going to put this in your guys' head before I start talking about these books. We have to ask ourselves or remind ourselves, even when we're in these situations and we want to maybe buy these books or collect these books, is it excitement for the character? Truly and genuinely, or is it the FOMO, the fear of missing out on missing financial gain? And these are where my concerns lie. And I'll come back to that more as I talk about each of them. So my first book, book 3, that I'm picking today is Avengers number 9. I love seeing Silver Age books on this list. This is the first appearance of Wonder Man. There he is for the first time in all his glory in that classic green costume.
It's ugly. It really is.
Yep. But hey, it's classic Avengers Silver Age stuff. So let's look at the numbers. And as you guys may know, when these books hit the list, we look at, which was last week, we look at the numbers that they did when they hit the list, and then I compute the numbers over this last week so we can see how they've been trending since they made the top 10 list. All right. When it hit the list, it had 148% upward trend in sales. And when it hit the list, we're looking at a CGC 8.0 high of $1,900. This week's 8.0 high, $2,200. So it increased a little bit. But guys, even in 8.0, there's not many sales of this book. There was only the one this week and the one last week. Now, look at this. And this is to give you guys context. Over the last 12 months, outside of the last 2 weeks since this announcement, right? Prior to this, I call it the spec since the announcement of the rumor. There's only been 4 sales of 8.0s. And that the average of those 4 sales, $1,110. So that's just about half of this week's sale of $2,200. So that is basically a double in value. It's 100% almost increase in value. Could this be a concern? It very well could be. Let's look at Raws. Last week's high Raw, 213. That's when it hit the top 10. This week's high Raw, 310. So after it hit the top 10, it continued to trend upward. But what I always like to say, especially for a Silver Age book, guys, don't get caught up on the high Raws because you don't know what that 213 was roughly maybe a fine copy, and maybe that 310 was a very fine copy. We don't know. They're raw books. But it is a 40, excuse me. I'm sorry. That is average, guys. That is an average for Raws. But still, we don't know if there are very fine high grades, low grades in there within the average. So it's a 46% increase in value when looking at the average sales from this week to last. The average prior to this announcement, $137. So what does this say? For me, it says that this is a Silver Age first appearance. It's Wonder Man, B-list character, but still valued because we value comics. We value comics, and I don't have to over explain why this book already had value. But it's jumped even in raw value more than those 8.0 averages. This book has more than doubled basically over the last couple of weeks on average. This is a tough one, Jeff. Props or flops? So again, I want to reiterate. I did my video last week on the top 10 discussing what I really think of top 10s and why I really enjoy the cover price lists because it's basically real data based on units moving. I would never use any top 10 as an indicator to buy. I'm going to repeat that. Never use a top 10 list as a shopping list. So coming from that perspective, every single book on this list probably would be a flop if I was sitting here trying to tell you, is it a good time to buy this book? I'd say no. Why? Because it's on a top 10 list and it's been sitting there for a week. But we got to look at different factors and variables. We're not just looking at it from a purchasing standpoint. Let's look at it from a point if you already have this book in your collection. Is it a prop or a flops? How about long-term value and long-term hold? How about short-term flip? Props or flops? If you're talking about a short-term flip and you bought this book even 2 weeks ago, it would be a props because you're obviously most likely making money. If you bought it 5 years ago, you're making a good amount of money. You get the trend there? Okay. What about a long-term hold? Well, the book already had value before the movie spec. Ultimately, I'm going to stick with a gut feeling here, Jeff.
Go for it.
And before I say that, I'm going to look at a couple of these comments. Raising Elm says props. Raw Dog says flops and props. And yeah, I'm going to give this book flops.
Ooh.
I am going to give this book flops. And here's why. You just said early in the show, Jeff, we were talking about who to cast for this character, and we don't know if we can get these big names in there because it is a B-list character, but you never know what the MCU can do. This book is a huge win and a huge props for anybody who has had this book sitting in their collection. Any Silver Age Marvel legacy run, and for the legacy runs, it means the main runs, Fantastic Four, Avengers, ASM, even Daredevil, even you can argue Captain America taking over Tales of Suspense, and Thor taking over Journey. So any Silver Age book from those runs is a solid investment if you've had it sitting in your collection for a couple years plus, right? This book, even as a Silver Age book, has a lot of volatility. A lot of volatility. Because this book is pretty much doubled in value simply because of spec. And I do have a feeling that the book's going to increase more. We're going to see this book probably increase more when we get an official announcement from Marvel Studios and we get like a logo, like we usually do. We usually get the font, the title font, right, for the show or the film. And then we'll get a casting. And that'll keep pushing this book. But I'm going to use Eternals #1 as an example. Now, I know Eternals #1 is a Bronze Age book, but it's an earlier Bronze Age. It's mid-Bronze Age. And it's a Kirby book. And I actually believe the Eternals have a lot of value there inherently just in the comic books. I don't think they were, I'm not talking about movie spec. I think a lot can happen with this character in this book that's similar to what we saw happen to Eternals. That book has, and I don't use this term lightly, that book has crashed. And while I do believe that book will rebound long term, and we'll see that book being a healthy book, simply why? Because inherently it's a Bronze Age Kirby Marvel book. If Wonder Man comes in the MCU and it's mediocre and it doesn't hit us like Guardians hit us, I have a feeling that people are going to forget about this book for the short term, at least, really, really fast. And people aren't going to hold it. They're going to dump it off. And we're going to see these books back to being flooded on the market. Another thing you got to consider as well, there's not a lot of volume of these books on the market in higher grades, even mid-high grades. So we might see a lot more people submitting these books to CGC, CBCS, which could boost up the census. And then if something doesn't pan out, then we see a drop. Then we see a higher census count of a lot more of these books, even graded, on the market where just the demand is not going to hold up to the supply. So ultimately, I have to give it flops simply because of all those variables right now. The book is extremely volatile, even though I say that without taking away anything of what it is inherently and what I think it'll remain 10, 20 years down the line, even regardless of movie hype. But right now, volatility is steering my answer.
That's fair. And it's interesting. I just want to let the audience know that Chris and I were talking earlier today, about this segment and thinking about putting maybe some criteria to props or flops, because it is a bit it could be all over the place. And right now, I'll tell you what, Chris, and I think you'll agree with this. This is not how we phrase it, but it's all about perspective. Am I right? It's all about where you're coming from. And for me, personally, again, using the word personally, I find this book to be a prop because it has sentimental value to me. He was part of the first, comic book that got me into comic books, and I would love to have this book. I'm not going to pay those prices right now, and I'm going to try and find a better deal. But it's a prop for me. And I'm not talking from a spec perspective. I'm not talking about having this as some sort of valuable that you could potentially flip for another thing. And I guess that's spec as well. But you see what I'm saying, though, right? You see that this to me is a sentimental prop.
Yep. And I think you can add to that by saying this, even though you said you didn't. You wouldn't necessarily pay these values, especially probably those graded values. But say somebody really enjoys the Wonder Man character and they're kind of FOMOing out, but it's not a spec FOMO. Let's go back to what I said initially. Like when we talk about Wonder Man, are these books in the list because people really care about the character or there's financial gains?
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, Jeff. I don't think the majority of people are thinking like you. I think they ain't caring about Wonder Man. They're caring about freaking FOMO because there's financial gain. But there is a way to FOMO because of that sentimental value. And I don't think it's necessarily a loss. If somebody that really enjoys the character and sees this is a Silver Age key book.
Yeah.
And even if they go out and buy maybe a low grade raw right now and maybe it dips down some, I'm sure 20 years from now, it's still going to be more than what they paid. And at least they got their hands on it and it means something to them. And that absolutely matters from perspective as well.
Yeah, I'd be proud to put this on my wall. And I'm glad I now have a hashtag thanks to Lowbrow Ephemera. Jeff Speaks. Thank you. Let's get it going, everybody. Just kidding. Let's keep it going, guys. We love to hear your commentary, props or flops. So we're going to move on to the next book. Again, want to hear what you guys think, but Chris has a lot to say about this next book. Chris.
All right. So what did I say? Wonder Man or The Spot taking up the majority of these books. So I had to go with the Spot book. And I went with, I think, the most feasible one out of all of them. That's Spectacular Spider-Man number 98. Because this is indeed the first full appearance of the Spot. As we know, the trilogy 97, is the first character of Jonathan Owen, which is him before he becomes the Spot. And then, of course, 99, cover appearances are awesome. It's the second appearance, but this is the book. It's commanding the most money here. So let's look at these numbers. And again, remember, this is Across the Spider-Verse. Why this book got hot. 145% upward trend in sales when it hit the top 10 last week. And when it hit the top 10, we had a high 9.8. $775, man. Wow. This week's high 9.8 was 650. 125% drop. And you could see that as being a huge thing. But guys, remember, first off, there's perspective to put into, and don't get caught up just on highs. I always recommend you guys to evaluate averages, okay? And when we're going to evaluate averages, we're going to do that right now by looking at the last 12 months. Now, this is prior to the spec on it because of the Across the Spider-Verse news. $387 average for a 9.8 over the last 12 months prior to basically the last couple of weeks. Fair market value of a 9.8 pre-COVID leading into 2020, $38. Now, context. We're in a different market right now, even with the ebb and flow, even with the the cooling off of some of the market and some of the dips. We're in a different market still. So take that into consideration. But there's a reason why I put these numbers still up here, because I still think this wide margin of differential is questionable. Let's look at Raws. And again, guys, I apologize. These are averages. Last week's average Raw, $47. That's when it hit the top 10. This week's average Raw, $39. That is a 70% decrease. But again, it's an average. It's rough. But you may see a bit of a trend here with already over this last week, cool-offs on average. But now let's look at this average. Prior to the announcement a couple weeks ago, average was sitting at around $20. So let's look at some positives. Spider-Man comic books in general are a sound investment when you're talking about investment reasons or investment purposes of comic books. You got a lot of Spider-Man books, especially Amazing Spider-Man from the 1990s, that'll command 3 times as much as his other Marvel counterparts. I mean, if you look at even the legacy runs, like let's look at early to mid 90s Thor books. Besides, a couple keys in there, they don't command as much as Spider-Man does. Spectacular Spider-Man is a secondary run to Amazing Spider-Man, but still great art, great storytelling, and it's a top tier run in my humble opinion that's going to continue to increase in value, especially the keys in there. So this book had value. I mean, shoot, $387 just organically and as an inherent value without any spec. That's a solid book. This is a Copper Age book. That's solid. But jumping up to around a $700 fair market value and a 9.8, jumping up more than double in a matter of a couple of weeks for an average Raw. I'm questioning this, folks. Think about it. What can you buy? What can you invest in for $775? I mean, you can invest in a Wolverine #1 limited series, first solo title, in a 9.8 for roughly $850, $900 right now. I mean, I know that's a little bit more. You could invest in a 9.6 for $600. And when you talk about long-term value or precedent in terms of sustainability and the least volatile, I'd pick that book any day over this, even though I'm a Spider-Man fan. How about some mid-grade Silver Age keys that you could put the same amount of money down? You can still put down $700 on an Amazing Spider-Man 129. I don't know exactly what grade at this point. It's going to have to probably be a lower grade, but you can still do it. And that is a proven blue chip key in any grade. But here you have a Copper Age 80s book of a character that is basically a throwaway character. I mean, oh man. And I know Across the Spider-Verse is probably going to be another great movie doing great things with all these characters. But is it going to be enough? And I just don't think it is. So I think this book is extremely volatile right now. I think this book's going to be extremely volatile in the future, even if Across the Spider-Verse is a success. Unless they make the Spot the main villain or a main antagonist, for whatever they do with him in the story. And he sticks around and he sticks into our hearts and minds. And I just don't see that happening either. So, while I love everything Spider-Man, and while I'll probably be selling a copy of this book a few months from now, I got to give this book a flops. I know, I know. It's not good marketing, is it, guys? But you know who I am.
You said it at the beginning.
Yep.
You absolutely said it at the beginning.
I'm not that person. I'm not going to tell you to buy these comics now. I'm not going to hype this book up just because I'm selling it. Again, do I think it's a good book? Yeah, for other reasons. But let's go back to the other thing I said at the beginning of the segment, Jeff. All of these people that are buying the Spot books, do you think they were people like me who's read all these books? I've read all these books, all of them. Spot's fun. He's fun, guys. He pops in and out. He makes his little holes and, do you think I heard this announcement and was like, oh my God, the Spot. And I am one of the most die-hard Spider-Man fans ever. Hell no. The one thing that I did say was like, okay, that's interesting. I bet that the Sony with the Across the Spider-Verse is probably going to have fun with it, and it's going to be fun and entertaining. Not once did I think about, oh my God, this is going to be brilliant, and I got to go buy his comics. I think the majority of people buying this book are those that are trying to flip and make money. And again, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
or they're FOMOing out, thinking that they're going to miss out on financial gain. But you missed the boat on this, because I just don't. I don't. I see when this movie happens and it's done and we're moved on from it, this book goes right down close. So you know what? I'll say one more thing too, Jeff, about this book, and I'll let you jump in. I usually say most books, especially if they're not modern, when they get hot because of spec value, especially if they're Marvel, a lot of times they hit thresholds. I talk about that a lot, right, Jeff? Even when they dip back down, they usually don't dip back down to the new floors that they set. And while I think maybe this book is has a new floor for the future, maybe the average for a Raw isn't going to sit at 20 anymore. Maybe the average fair market value for the 9.8 ain't going to be in the 300s anymore. But I don't think when this book cools back off, it's my humble opinion that it's going to drop back down not much higher to those points. And that's just my humble opinion. And that's why I have to give this book flops.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Again, it's about perspective, and we need some consistency here. That's why Chris and I are probably going to work on these criteria for props or flops. But for me, this book right here, I do enjoy the character of the Spot. Very unique, fun. I think he's going to be awesome in Across the Spider-Verse. I really do. But I'm going to give this book flops. I personally have no interest in this book. It is a cool cover. You got Kingpin, Black Cat, and Spider-Man on there. But again, I am not going to go running out like you basically had an orgasm the way you acted. Some people probably had an orgasm who are huge Spot fans, just blew their minds. But honestly, no, it's not for me. So probably went a little too far with the orgasm thing, but it's just an example for everybody. So I just heard
Herogasm.
Herogasm, yep. Anyway, so yeah. We're gonna move on. A lot of you guys, I think a majority of you are in the flops on this as well. So I think we're all in agreement on this, especially Ledecker. Spot goes splat.
Yeah. So I would say the same thing for the other couple of the Spot books that made the list as well.
Yeah, 100%.
There might be less volatility there though if they haven't spiked. And I didn't look at all the data, but if the values haven't spiked that much, but for this one specifically, because of that extreme spike in I mean, that's just a lot of money. It's crazy.
Look at this. Raising Elm, spot on, Chris and Jeff. Well done. All right, we have one more book left in this segment for top 10 look back props or flops. Chris, what is that book? Tell me.
Yeah, I gave you guys.
I already interrupt you.
Yes.
Tell it.
Okay.
Now.
I already gave you my answer about the other Spot books, so it's not going to be those.
Nope.
We got Grimm #1 third print now. Last week it was second print.
Not that one either.
We got Spawn.
Nope. No, that's a weird one, right? I'm not.
Yeah. I gotta go with another Wonder Man. Wonder Man #1, the ongoing series. This was #1 on the list. Guys, I'm going to be selling this book on Tuesday. You like that moment of silence?
Yeah, it was very dramatic, and everybody had a chance to read C to the G, who was on Hawaiian time, his comments. I like that.
Okay, look. Okay, guys, I'm being very transparent here. Let's look at these numbers, and before I'm just gonna get right into the numbers, guys. So this is his first ongoing solo series, right? 103% upward trend in sales when it hit the list last week with a 9.8 high of $179. This week's high 9.8 is $250. But look at this. Look at this, Jeff, in audience. 9.8 sales between those two numbers. 179, 89, 89, 250. What? Wow, weird. And then look at this.
Wow.
On the same day, the 9.8 sold for 89, a 9.6 sold for 118.
Jesus.
Wow. This book is all over the place. Let's look at some raws. Now, this is highs. The top ones are highs there for this one. It had a high raw of $17 when it hit the list. It had a high raw of $20 this week. So, not much change there. Average last week when it hit the list was 7. Average last week was 11. 57% increase. And when I was looking at all the numbers, because, I say don't take the averages with a grain of salt. There was a lot of more books last week, when it hit the top 10 that were like $4, $5, $6 with, of course, some over that $7 mark, where this week it was very rare. They were definitely more hanging around the double digits this week, with maybe a few in like the 7 or 8 mark. So it's definitely moved up. Now, I gave Avengers #9. The first appearance of Wonder Man, a Silver Age key, Jeff, flops. What do you think I'm going to give this book?
Don't make me guess. I don't know, man. You haven't.
Go ahead.
You're going to give the? You know what? I think you're going to give it props.
Let's ask the audience. Audience, what do you think I'm going to give this book? Props or flops? And while you guys are answering, I'm going to say this about this book. First off, this 9.8 is just weird. Guys, don't pay $200+ for a 9.8 of this book first and foremost. Don't. Because it's just, I don't know what's going. This right here, this is what it tells me, guys. This is pure FOMO. It tells me that somebody is so in their feelings that they go on. One or two people, I say this all the time, all it takes is a couple of people to get in their feelings when that auction item goes down. But guess what? That $250 sale was a buy it now. Somebody had one listed for $300 and they accepted an offer of $250. Guys, come on. While these other books were selling for $89, even $179. There's an auction right now with one of them at about $140 with like 1 day left. I don't think it's going to get to the 200 mark. That's just my opinion. But hey, you never know. Here's another thing with this.
There's a lot of opinions on this book from everybody. This one is like a catalyst of we got a waterfall here of opinions. This is great. I love it. I love seeing what everybody thinks. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So guys, I'm going to bring up one more piece of data here for you guys. Okay. Before we get into my decision, we're going to bring up census count for this book. All right. If we're looking at,
I'm going to interrupt you one more time because I don't want this comment to go. I need to know if Shoujo is serious. I only pay over $200 if it still has the free poster inside. Serious. I just need to know if that's for real.
Oh, well, that does make. Well, here's the thing. Can this book get a 9.8 blue label if the poster's removed?
Yeah, that's a good question. No. No.
I don't think it can. I don't think it can. So,
Yeah, no, yeah.
yeah. So, and also these 9.8s were not newsstands. So I want to make that very clear. They were not newsstands. They were direct. This book has 136 on the census, or 131, excuse me, 9.8s. Jeff, what am I going to say about 131 9.8s of this book on the census? What do you think?
That's a lot.
It's a decent amount, right? But it's not quite a lot, because we can look at, I mean, big keys, even Bronze Age keys and some Silver Age keys have hundreds of 9.8s.
Well, I mean, this is a 90s book, so the opportunity to have more 9.8s on there is there.
Exactly. So this is what I'm going to look out for, guys. I'm going to look out for the next couple of months for that census number to double, if not more, because people that are holding on to these books are going to be sending them in, trying to get those 9.8 so they can flip them.
Ta-da, as Fat Dad kind of supports that as well.
And there you go. And the market will become absolutely flooded. Now, here's the thing. Stay away from this book in a 9.8 if you were me. That's just me. There are many 9.8 potential copies out there in back issue bins, or maybe people pulled them and they're selling them for $10, $15, $20 now. For me, I would rather buy 10 copies of this book that are 9.8 potential at a $20 price point. That's $200 spent. And I would rather send them all into CGC and get a couple back at a 9.8, flip them, and have money in my pocket. But props or flops for this book overall. I'm going to give this book props. And Jeff, you called it.
I did. I think you're playing mind games with me. That's the only reason. I wasn't putting any kind of intuition as to what you're thinking. I just thought, that's where I went with that.
Okay. And let me tell you guys why I'm giving it props. No, it's not because I'm selling a copy on Tuesday, because I'm going to still be honest with you guys. Obviously, I'm being honest with you about 9.8s. Very, very, very volatile, very iffy. Don't even touch it, in my humble opinion. But you guys can spend money however you want to spend money. That's all good. I give this book props because of one thing. It's very low risk if you look at value. Okay. I do still believe that a lot of people buying up this book, though, are, just people trying to see a financial gain. And if you're really trying to see a financial gain for this book, I don't know how much will be there for you guys. I don't know how much. This is, I understand we value the first solo series. It's not even his first solo series. The 86 book was, even though it's a one-shot. This is basically a second solo series, but first ongoing. So we've seen him before solo with the Wonder Man title on it. So that takes away from this book. And I don't know. It's like my love for, Warlock and the Infinity Watch #1. That book has gained in value. It has, and I think there's more room to grow for that book, but there's so many of them on the market. It's not a book that'll ever fatten your pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you're not going to have your kids,
right?
Your kids' college?
Right. Even off of my 30 copies. Yeah, no. Right. So I think there's even less here for this book, but I give it props because of a couple of reasons. And the main reason is this. And Jeff, it's because this book hit #1 on the list, right? Mm-hmm. What does that mean when a book hits #1? It moved the most units next to what it was doing previously. It had the highest upward trend in terms of what it was doing previously, moving the most units. But it did so without it going absolutely nuts.
That's
because Yeah, because look, we've seen stuff in the past where books like this we can have this announcement and a 9.8 can shoot up to $400, $500, where the raw copies can shoot up to $40, $50, $60. And it's not doing that. Like $7 to $11, even though that's a 57% increase, it's only a few more dollars, guys, right? It's only a few more dollars. So if you had $7 in your pocket and you really wanted this book, what's paying a few more dollars? Not much. $17 to $20. It's only $3 more. And I know that there's a couple of outliers, and that's what I'm going to look at these. The 179, the 250, those are outliers. I mean, people were buying this book and a 9.8 for under $100 this last week as well. I give this book props because I'm taking a different approach of looking at this book. I'm being optimistic to say that at least with all the FOMO out there, with all the speculation hype and people acting on their emotions and just going crazy with their money, it seems that people went into this book not overreacting like we've seen as of late. And I like that because you know what it does? It makes it less volatile for when it cools off or the show doesn't pan out or the show is a success, but we move on and we start thinking about other things. Because remember, this is a B-list character and this is a 90s book that's mass produced that isn't even his first appearance. So I give this book props again, simply because it's not doing anything crazy on the market. It's very low risk, but I still wouldn't use this list as a shopping cart. And that's why I said, I'm going to be selling this book next week. And I'm telling you guys right now, I don't know. I might start if it's a high grade, maybe I'll start the auction at $5. Maybe I'll only get 1 or 2 bids on it and sell it for $6, $7, maybe, who knows? But I'm telling you right now, if you're in my show and you want this book really bad, I guarantee you there's probably going to be 50 of them on eBay at the time that I'm selling mine. You could probably go to your LCS and still find some in the back issues. So there's no need to go crazy for it. And that's what I got to say. But again, my optimism allows me to give this book props, Jeff. And you know what else I avoided? Was going a full whammy for all 3 picks.
Hat trick. Yeah, you did. I'm going to make this quick. Again, perspective, sentimental value. I had this book. I remember it being a quirky series. I love the cover. And Jacob Comics, he's like, cover alone makes it props. I'm going to give it props. Again, just for it's near and dear to my heart. I'm not like a diehard Wonder Man fan. I do know quite a bit about him because, again, reading those books early on in my comic book collecting journey, they were so impressionable. So I know a lot about those characters from West Coast Avengers, and I really appreciate them. So I'm psyched. I'm hoping this news, again, grows some more legs, and we start to see some concrete decisions being made by the MCU. So I'll give it props.
Awesome. Jeff, I want to say one more thing on this. Bring up this Matt Stash comment right here. This is funny that he brought it up. I was going to include it on the image, but it just became too much. But Matt Stash says, if you find a 9.9, pull the trigger. You guys want to know something really hilarious? So, Jeff, bring up the graphic one more time. If we look at these numbers here, and we look at what they were selling for, the 179. So the 179 sold on the 17th. A few hours before that, a 9.9 actually sold for guess how much? $150.
Wow.
So whoever,
Wow.
I'm telling you, you don't get caught up in your emotions, guys. Come on now.
Wow. Real quick before we end this segment, going back to some of the comments.